What up, people? What's happening? What's going on? How are we living out there? How are we enjoying the quarantine? We doing big things? Everybody finding a hobby? I think that's what people need to do. They need to find a hobby. I'm drawing, I'm painting, I'm gaming, I'm living life. You need something to take your mind off the craziness. Go to live stream. Why is this not giving me an option to... near automata. And more. Oh, so I guess it's on Game Pass. Yeah, someone was telling me about Near Automata. It was a game I should definitely try. So, if it's on Game Pass and it's free, and free is for me, I'll do that. I really want to play some Animal Crossing. It's everywhere. Everybody's talking about it. I'm jealous. I looked into it, and someone was saying that my time in Portia is like an alternative to it. So I've been playing that a little bit, and I'm enjoying it. There aren't the super cute and adorable animals, but get in there, run around, do some craziness. I think I got a text or a message. My phone's about to die though. Let the team know I'm on. I'm live. I'm streaming. Let's do it. Here we go. Here we go. Warm up a bit. Let's do. Actually, I think I just posted had some pretty nice shots with the RE45. I need to get better with the iron sights of the Scout is one I really do not like. I mean, that's kind of forgiving. I'm aiming over their shoulder there. I mean, I guess maybe with a little bit of bullet drop. Oh, my glasses. My glasses. Where be my glasses? See? I don't know what my cool ones are, but these are here. I don't know. I could put them anywhere. I was drawing earlier, so they could be literally anywhere in the. So let's see. See what that kicks out versus. Oh, stabilizer seems to be the same on these guns. At least with a single shot. See what that look like. Boo, 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 boo. Up and to the right. I mean, I was much closer, but seemed to move less and actually go up and to the left. That's interesting. That seemed to go straight up almost, actually. It's kind of the same pattern, it just, maybe it's slightly smaller. My phone went off. Ah! Yeah! I'm dropping stuff, I'm breaking things. Alright, I'm still coming. I'm still coming. This will take a bit, but I'll get back on. Oh yeah, the supermoon. I forgot about the supermoon too. It's really big, but I think it was bigger. It's behind Gabrielle's. I don't think I can see it if I look out my window. I don't think I can see it if I look out the window. My neighbor's house is in the way. I need to organize this little room. Alright. Now that that's charging, let's try. I was really enjoying good old Spitfire. Let's put. Ideally, I would get the 2X. Let's go with this guy. I don't got the patience for that. Let's do that. Oh yeah, it just feels good. easy when they're not moving, right? It's a piece of cake. Go. Yo, 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 what's happening?
Going on?
No,
In the game?
firing range.
Oh, okay. You want to play?
Just trying to warm up my wingman firing.
Getting any better? Do you like it?
Maybe a little bit.
Remember at one point I liked the wingman. I was getting so good like when I first started playing.
Yeah, I was feeling that just whenever. One of the days where we were playing.
Oh, what the fuck? I just left the fucking game and then started a new one without inviting me. Oh, yeah. Oh, my girl.
My girl.
What was you saying?
Just the other night when we were playing, it was, words. I was doing pretty good with it. Party joined will be visible in the lobby, so I gotta leave. I was the wingman and the Spitfire I was doing really good with the other day. I was really enjoying it. Yeah, I'm having fun, Zeddy. I'm enjoying myself. The silver body shield is it's the white body shield is one of them, but the one that like glows is a new. It's called an Evo body shield. So the more damage you do, it builds up slots to become a better shield. So you don't have to find a level blue shield. You can turn that into a blue shield or a purple shield or a gold shield or a red shield. So if you keep it and you do like 500 damage, it becomes good enough to like have, I don't know, I guess you'll have 250 health technically. 225 says the Grimbo.
It's an extra 25, an extra segment shield.
I do not care who makes everything in the box, as long as I can observe it.
Alright. Alrighty then. I'm ready to rock. Turn this mic a bit. Get a little bit further from the screen.
She like the way that I rock. She like the way that I move.
This is your champion.
You hear that song? Dior, Dior.
No, I don't think so.
She like the way I dance. She like the way that I move. She like the way that I rock. She like the way that I woo. Alright, let's do the shit for a warm up. Get your speed going up. You probably should have stayed on longer.
Oh shit, I thought I switched to lifeline.
But this thing can just make... you don't look like
Definitely
lifeline. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like my hair is blowing in the wind. I don't think their graphics do that.
Probably is. The fucking shield still there? Oh my god. Suck it, Cole. Oh, now I gotta go. How do you like them apples? I probably like them as much as the apples.
Oh shit, I thought you were downstairs.
I ate when I died. No! Somebody else downed me. I'm about to drop down.
I got you.
He's about to come around. Teammate, go around that corner, teammate. Stop downstairs and you'll
Yep.
got him.
Oh, teammate's down. I didn't realize teammate was down.
You are fortunate we are on the same team.
Did you have 2 boxes?
Nah, just the one.
Oh, no, that cautious must have went off and never fucking recovered. Or never got killed, or maybe got picked up. Shit. I almost fell off. Well, you want to go somewhere? Oh, we're about to land anyway. Yeah, might as well just go.
We should conduct a search right here.
Let's see a shield battery.
Yeah, I need me a shirt.
Shield battery.
Pick it up, pick it up.
There's one right here.
Okay. Oh, I think there's one up here. No, it's not one. Alright. Shit, we got people here?
Subject spotted.
Oh, hold on. Let me heal up first.
Alright. They're already
And I barely
coming
have
to
any
you.
bullets.
Oh, where'd they go? I thought they were jumping off this thing.
1 sec. Send out my
Okay.
decoy.
Where's that body shield?
Oh, they're going on the ship.
Ship over there.
Oh, maybe teammate picked it up. Oh shit. Alright. Alright, I'm all healed. I'm gonna go try to help teammate out.
Down a target.
The teammates are probably gonna come back.
Patching up.
Nice.
Kinda need some bullets. They got them. Oh, they. Alright, there's some energy for me. There's light
Yeah.
in there.
Shotgun ammo here.
I'm gonna have to pop this Phoenix.
I hear them. They're coming up
Alright,
over
I'm
there.
popping this Phoenix.
Giving him the ship. Throwing thermite. Arc start out.
He's down here. There we go.
The ring isn't
I couldn't even see him. I just fucking wasted him in smoke.
Still no shirt?
Luck and a
Nobody's
hope and a
got a fucking
dream.
shirt for me? Alright. I'm just gonna start heading. Yeah, I'm
This way.
going in.
3-0. Rings close.
Yes, no shirt, I guess. Did you get that feed
Yeah, I
shit?
used it to get full health. What up,
Yeah, okay.
Zero?
Hey dudes.
What's crapping?
I'm waiting on some shit to cook. I thought I'd play a game in the meantime when y'all are done with that one.
Alrighty then. What are you cooking?
Some chicken and barbecue sauce.
Barbecue sauce.
Oh, I thought they pinged this way. What happened?
Little sauce like a boss.
Rings moving.
You got the bow sauce. Ah, that sucks, yo. There is this. Oh, well, he was not even going to tell you. But there's a
Alright,
shield
I'm
over
gonna
here.
check up here. I don't want to be running through late to everything. I'm sure I'll find a body shield up here. Oh, heavy ammo. I needed that. Oh, got a purple stabilizer.
Care package touching down. They usually carry rare weapons. Extended sniper mag here. Level 3. Taking a knee. Patching up.
Oh, the shield battery. They weren't gonna fucking say anything. They pinged a purple sniper mag, but not a shield battery.
Yeah, they're fucking retarded, I think. I think they eat paint chips. Not 100% on that.
They might just do that.
You see any stabilizers?
Nah, I
around
got
here?
one. That's it.
I'll be right back.
sir. Oh, I got 300 light bolts. I think I'm gonna drop this Spitfire, and then you could have my heavy ammo.
I had to get rid of my
Oh, you're not using the heavy?
flatline cinnamon
shit.
bullets.
Sniper.
I will once I find like bullets for it. Right now I have a stupid havoc.
Body shield here. Level 2.
Oh yeah.
I will take that.
Oh, did I fucking? Oh, I guess I left one of these. So what?
Heavy ammo here. Thermite grenade here.
Oh, that body shield's down further. Shit. Okay. Oh, there's heavy over here.
No.
Heavy ammo here. R301 here.
Oh, somebody's here. Somebody's here. Shit.
I had it stock. What the fuck? My gun fell apart and I'm missing parts.
Gas trap deployed. Gas trap deployed.
for that blue shield. That's my blue shield, bitch.
Dude, I just lit him the fuck up. Definitely almost dead.
Got him. My blue shield. There's heavy bullets in there. There's a stabilizer in there.
Yeah, I found one.
Okay, well, I'll take that. There's a prowler in there.
Yeah, I don't have a select fire yet, so I'm just gonna leave it until I find one.
Yeah, I'm running double light. I'm done with heavy. So I'm dropping this 60 heavy then.
Heavy ammo
Take
here.
more light.
Oh wait, did I get this syringes?
I
or
did.
get
You
'em?
picked something below it.
I don't have
I got
any.
4, so here I'll give you.
Yeah.
Here,
Alright,
no,
don't
no,
worry about
split them, split them, split them shits.
What do you mean I picked something below?
Yeah,
it looked
you
like I
grabbed
did. Maybe because whatever
I forget what it was. Shield something maybe. There was something that was below it. That was the next thing down that you grabbed. So I figured you had heals.
maybe because I was trying to get that. Yeah, I hear people.
Making contact here.
Yep, just jump
100%
down.
Motherfuckers in here. Oh, right here.
Got him. I'm gonna gas him. Just got pulsed.
Just got
Oh,
pulled.
he's lagging like a motherfucker.
Placing gas trap.
Get out of town. Purple shirt in here.
Oh, okay.
Give me a second. Recharging shield.
Just select fire yet? Fuck it. I'm just gonna make the switch.
I just gassed the shit
I'm
out
gonna do
of.
the prowler.
Oh yeah, 2x. I just dropped the U sight in there.
Optics here. Close range.
Oh, purple shirt's empty.
I think I have 2 U sights.
Oh shit, this dude's getting all the.
No, not all the
Yeah,
stuff.
man. All the stuff.
Fuck him up. Alright, so I need throwables and a
I
select
just
fire.
pinged, he took it just as I was pinging it.
Or flatline. Motherfucker. Oh well.
Recharging shields.
Fuck this little bitch. No throwables, any's?
I don't know.
Who the fuck doesn't throw throwables?
Here, there's
I
throwables
love
right here.
these
There's a-
throwables.
Right on the ground. A Bernie stick.
Shields are recharging.
Oh,
Yeah, I
yeah.
got one Bernie stick on me. Oh, another 2x. Here's a.
Frag grenade here. Ring is in close proximity. 1 more minute.
Might as well top up on light bullets.
Oh, there you go. I'm gonna put another sort of fume kit in here if you want it.
Rings close. 45 seconds.
Yeah, I realize I already have one.
Alright, I'll stick with an even 300 light bullets. That's probably enough, right? An even 300.
We're moving in.
30 seconds. We are close.
I mean, it's like miles ahead of us. You're sticking with the Eva? Is that what you said?
No. Nope. That,
Oh, Evo? No, what'd you
I
say?
said I think
I feel like you
an
said
even
something
300 bullets should be good.
like that. Oh, even 300
10
bullets.
seconds
Okay.
remain. The ring is close.
Come on, select fire. There's some more Bernie sticks. I'll grab one of these. There's one for you.
So I can't carry an even 300 thingies.
Another Bernie
I'm
in
gonna
here.
drop the
That's
4
right.
syringes.
Care package being delivered.
I'm gonna switch out to the flat line.
Let's get to the LZ.
But I'm gonna find a select fire yet, and it's pretty late in the game. Oh, excuse
Yeah.
me. Our Bangalore set a zip line
Yeah,
for
ma'am.
us.
She loves
And the
polishing that
nana.
grapple.
And just like all this cool stuff in here. What the fuck? Purple barrel,
Level 3.
purple barrel
Put that on my
stabilizer.
301.
Blue standard stat.
Stabilizer here. Level 2.
Ships landed right to our north. Okay. Yep.
I'm
Yeah, there's
hearing
people
somebody.
across the way.
Like they're close. I hit a dummy thing. I hit a fucking
Give my shield a recharge.
Mirage bamboozle. I say we
They are not
reposition or
very
something.
good.
We're fighting uphill right now. Oh, that's ultimate gas. That shit sucks. But I think I like
Oh,
locking
shit.
us in with gas.
Somebody here! Oh, I can't! Oh man! I accidentally pulled out the. Damn it! That just. There's a Mirage at
Oh,
this
no!
door.
Damn, I just
Mirage
downed
is-
3 people. I gotta roll and fucking heal. I'm almost dead. Alright, sorry, yeah, I literally had just like 2 health. And then I do it, or else
Yeah.
I'd just die if I stayed
That's
there,
fine.
man. That's the last, like, more than 1 squad.
I'm not mad about it. Damn, burning the out of them.
I like my Barney, bitch.
How did no shields break?
Where they at?
Sorry about your luck. How are none of them down? Oh.
Oh my god, not banners. Oh my god, I'm trying to reload. Oh man.
Attention. The kill leader has been eliminated.
God damn, it was all going down
Yeah.
in there. Man, 1,500 damage. Jesus Christ. No, jeez.
Yeah, I had a Phoenix kit out. When I switched from whatever was out, something small, tried to pick a big shield battery, and I went up instead of over to the right. So then I started to pop that, so I stopped doing that. Switched to a shield, started popping that, then somebody was coming, came around the corner, so then I had to like stop that, try to get my gun out, and I couldn't do that stuff fast enough, so I died.
Yeah, that was insane, that last building. Oh my god. There's like probably at least 3 squads came in there.
Yeah, at one point there's 3 people crawling around, and that's why I'm like, how are they not dead?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I knew there was 2. After I downed the 3rd guy and they didn't all die, I was like, oh shit. And then just downed more
shit.
people, and there's probably still people crawling. I probably still had more kills.
We're in a game without 0.
Oh, what the
Oh, 0. Why are you not in our game, man?
Death is not
I think it's your fault.
Here, send us an invite.
Yeah,
I'm in your lobby.
yeah, I
Oh,
figured
you're in
you
the
would
lobby?
be.
Oh, then what the hell the fuck did that happen?
Well, see, like I heard you guys talking about losing, and then I joined you, and then it was like you were already in another match. I mean, it said you were both in a match when I joined you, so I don't know what happened there.
Oh.
Some fucked up shit.
Surprise.
Were you still crawling around, Joe, or you were a boxer?
I turned into a box. I didn't get an invite.
I didn't realize either of you were killed.
Oh, you're in the lobby. Oh.
I'm in your
You're
lobby.
in
you
the
just gotta
lobby,
leave the-
dude. Just just go back to the lobby. Yeah, I'll send you an
No,
invite
I'm
if
coming
make
back to
you
the
feel
lobby.
better. You're still gonna have to go back to the lobby.
Just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
Fuck your invite.
Well, looks like you accepted
I
it.
didn't accept it. That'll sit in my invites forever.
Yeah, so I didn't realize. I thought you were both crawling in that room. So when I was in that last fight, and I picked up like the banner card, I was completely caught off guard. I had no idea either of you were even a box yet. I thought you were one of the people I kept seeing going around in there.
I was dead at that point. I was outside. Or no, I was by another door. I crawled in.
Did you time out?
Somebody shot me.
Shoot you,
I crawled in and shut the door and locked it, and then Mirage was kicking the door down. And I said, "There's a Mirage at my door," but then it didn't matter. They killed me pretty quickly.
Oh, I killed him right after he killed you. I think. It was towards the door that I went out to heal, because when I heard you say something about a Mirage, he was fighting. Oh, maybe he was shooting you. I thought I saw him shooting inside. I thought he was shooting an enemy.
No, somebody else downed me. He was shooting an enemy. It was I think it was a Bangalore that downed me. I forget.
It's opening season. Our path is set. Let's run. We all have our
Well,
reasons.
let's make it interesting. Let's go to that place right in there.
It didn't have to happen.
All right.
It did.
Yeah. Right by the tank.
Yeah.
You going by the tank? Tank nothing.
Ain't
To me,
nothing wrong with a little
tain't
bit
a
of
problem.
tank licking. Ain't nothing wrong with a little bit of tank licking.
Oh shit! Somebody actually like knocked me out of the way. There's some fucking robot in my ship.
Shit, yeah, I got a dude over here.
Alright, I
with me
grabbed the
too,
Nevo coming.
I don't know
Oh
where he went.
shit! I got a gun at least. Like nothing in it.
Yeah,
Like,
I got
he's
a
in
gun.
here, I think. Yeah, he's right here.
You fuck with the wrong one, son.
Oh shit, I got one of them. Somebody's about to
Yes,
execute
Oh,
you
it's a
did.
wingman. I'll
Got
take his
buddy down
wingman.
right here.
If
Yeah,
I
inside
can
this
stop
building.
it from here. Nah, you're in the building. Yeah, I can get it.
Myself up. Hang on.
All
She's
right,
getting her buddy up in here.
Yeah, I'm
You guys
coming.
need to come in here
I
and
only
kick
have
some
4
ass.
bullets. Yeah.
Oh, there's another
I literally
dude.
only have 1 clip, so.
One more dude. Joe, don't give me up. Joe,
Joe,
there's another guy.
I can't go yet. So I literally don't have enough
That's fine.
bullets.
Okay, I'm backing out of the building. Shit, sorry, dude. I think.
It is what it is. I mean, we got unlucky
Now
with the
let's
fuck her up.
landing. I didn't even go to my building, so there might have been somebody in my building too. But you guys landed. I checked the thing out front, and both of you said there was people.
There we go. I got it.
in
Yeah,
your
sure.
building, so I just ran to Grimm's first because it was closer.
I got the kill, so I guess it was 2 different squads. I thought she's getting her dude up, but I guess she killed him, and so there's 2 people
Dog
up
chasing me like
around here. There's a Mirage and thing.
Oh no! Yeah.
I hate it when they duck. Fucks me up all the time.
Ah! No.
Something here.
Yeah, if I ran you with the 16 bullets in my gun plus 4, would have died even faster.
Yeah, it sucks when you got no ammo.
No, you guys ready?
I'm at a loading screen.
Where's the large thing?
Wiki wild west, Jim West, Desperado, Rough Rider. No, you don't want nada. None of this 6 gun in this brother running this Buffalo Soldier. Look, it's like I told you. Any damsel that's in distress, be out of that dress when she meets Jim West.
This motherfucker's spitting.
Roughnecks, go check the law and abide. Watch your step, don't flex. Get a hold of your side. I forget the words.
Midday, all good with me.
Watch your lip.
I just hope I don't have to fight with that smile.
Don't let your,
I'm just kidding. He's fine. Everyone's fine.
I don't know. Watch your something. Don't let your lip react. You don't want to see my hand where my hip be at. With Artemis from the start of this. Running the game. James West, taming the West. So remember the name.
Introducing your champion.
Who else you know can make Wild Wild West cool?
Yeah.
Impressive. I hope my creator saw it.
I kind of feel like after I heard that version that Will Smith's a fucking dork.
Man, I could have told you that. He got beat up at a basketball court one time and he like moved to California. What a bitch.
Oh, I didn't know.
No,
Did he
that's
really?
the story behind Fresh Prince.
Somebody slug him? Oh, right. I thought you... See, I was thinking Will Smith the celebrity. And I was thinking like an NBA game. Somebody slogged him or something. Huh? I think someone landed around us.
Everybody got guns, everybody's good.
Who's get? Shit.
Oh, she left. Oh, peacekeeper in that bitch.
Man, that was a quick. That was a quick
Oh,
leave.
shirt. I like shirts. Everybody got guns? Everybody okay on guns? Talk to me, people.
Yeah, so far
Grim?
I got a 45.
Grim,
with,
you okay with guns?
Yeah, I'm good. Grim, your mic's not working.
Oh shit, I've been
Yeah,
muted.
because I was
no
gonna say I
wonder.
could take that peacekeeper if somebody needed a
They're
gun.
answering anything I'm saying. The shirt here.
Oh,
Oh
shit's
man,
going
I
down.
really just want to go to where they're at, but I need bullets.
Oh shit!
Oh, right behind us, bro.
I guess it's time.
Two of them.
I don't have any.
He's almost dead.
There's two of them, bro.
Yeah, I'm healing up.
My turn. Oh, well, that won't hurt you.
Got one of them. I probably got the one that you almost killed.
Ya bitch.
I need shield cells. Oh, we got somebody over here?
I need Helios.
Oh,
Yeah,
another.
you have-
Joe, where you came from?
No,
there's
I
another one.
used it.
Helios shit. You have that stuff?
I broke his shield.
I used it because I needed it right after.
Alright. Hold on. Alright. Oh, wait. I'll be there in a second. I just want to go up before we fight
Alright,
him in the
I got him. Yeah.
Are they all
There's
dead?
one
Somebody
guy.
else is coming. Somebody else is coming. They're going.
He's
coming.
here.
They're on you.
And behind us. God damn it.
Fuck.
A million people.
Sometimes I worry about what Pitbull is doing in his with his bald-headed self. What? Why would you worry about what Pitbull's doing with him?
Hold on, just
He's
Worried
ready.
about that. I stopped worrying about Pitbull after he became Mr. Worldwide. I liked him better before that. He was Mr. Florida, Puerto Rico. Money is a major issue, man.
So today, I got my new sketchbooks. Super excited about them.
Order of the universe. I simply
It's the little things in life, man.
process.
3 words: win and win again. Yeah.
I was worried because I got
What?
they're both
Yeah.
watercolor sketchbooks, and I have a mixed media sketchbook already, watercolor sketchbook, and the watercolor sketchbook I have after I ordered these two, I had trouble like getting some shit to erase out of there, so I was like, fuck, I just spent like, I don't know, $25 on these two sketchbooks, and like they're gonna suck. But the ones that came are pretty decent. I'm happy with them.
Good shit.
So
So, did they cancel the art show you were going to
Yeah.
exhibit in?
Life itself is canceled, Zero. You didn't get the memo? We're supposed to blow our brains out.
Yeah. I saw this meme that showed George Washington flipping a bird, and it said, "We fought a war during a smallpox epidemic, y'all bitches."
But we started the smallpox epidemic. Not in the beginning.
I thought it was a contest.
I think you're getting that. I think you're conflating the
higher
two
the
different.
score.
I think you're talking about the smallpox
That never thing?
blankets.
Yeah, the ones that were meant to keep all the children warm.
I'm talking about the Revolutionary War, though.
I'm talking about the war against smallpox.
Was that the one that Jesus fought in?
Definitely the one that
Yeah.
Jesus himself showed up.
On his Robo-Raptor.
Yeah, obviously.
But see, that's where you get confused, because Jesus is the Roboraptor. He's all things in one.
Ah, nice. I got a double tap if anybody needs it. Just carrying it around
Yeah, I
for
don't
fun.
need it. An
I just picked up some
L-Star.
energy ammo if somebody wants it. And there's a wingman over there, which I can take if somebody wants his hemlock.
I'll take the
Let
energy.
me go up front. I need bullets.
For now, I'm carrying the
Bullets.
L-Star.
Energy ammo here.
Some of them bullets.
You going to the little village, Grim?
Thing out front. Wherever this shitty is.
I got more energy for you.
Oh shit! Energy galore.
Damn, dude, I cannot find fucking heavy bullets anywhere. I have 10 besides what's in my gun.
Yeah, I haven't found any
I'm
heavy either.
dropping
I don't
this
think.
hemlock.
Syringes.
So yeah, I can give you some heavy bullets.
Oh, there we go. I didn't realize I didn't have a backpack.
No kill leader. I must confess, it's what I love.
Alright, you're going for those syringes, Zero? Go get them.
There's
Oh,
two
where's
stacks,
the
so
Across the
so-
street, I think you pinged them.
In there. There's
Okay.
two of them
Go
in
up
there.
top.
With two of each, so 4 total. Did you drop that or no?
The what?
Yeah, I picked them up.
I
I
thought
mean, I
that-
picked up the.
the heavy ammo. I thought that's
Oh.
why we both stopped in the street
No, I was
together.
stopping to point out the thing to thing. No, I didn't drop it. I got it though. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. I'll probably find
No,
more.
I don't.
If you
I don't need it. I
you
got,
hang on.
and I'm picking up more right now. So I got plenty.
Standard stock here. Level 1.
I switched to a wingman so I could give this to you. I'm going to give this to you. And I just picked up another box, so I got plenty to share. I'm right here behind you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cancel that.
Sweet.
That's enough
Thank
for me
you.
to get by for now. So I got 60 bullets for my wingman.
I'm dropping a stack
Yeah,
of
yeah,
60
that's-
light. Oh, actually, I'm dropping it in
Man,
3 boxes.
You know me, I'll take all the ammo I can carry.
There's more light in here too.
Oh yeah.
Sniper
Shoot 'em up.
bullets. Nobody's using sniper shit, right?
No.
Oh, where's the? Yeah, I am. For the.
Are you? Oh. There's a blue sniper mag and this other sniper shit
There's a
right
blue
here.
heavy clip up here.
Excellent. Thanks.
Oh, I got one. Thank you. Here's a heart stopper.
Zero, did you pick up that 2X? Okay.
Yeah.
Just so it's not being left.
I got like 3 thermites. I can't even carry more. Where do you guys want to go next?
I was following you. I just now ran out of the little neighborhood.
2 arc
we
stars,
ran.
a grenades, syringes, burning stick.
Oh, yeah, I guess we have to
I
move
need to
back
carry
toward the-
more
Yeah, there's nothing in
syringes.
You don't have to do anything.
got-
You want to go to this town?
Well, yeah, I
over
mean
here?
the circle. Yeah, it's on the edge of the circle, sure.
We're already in the circle, so we're good.
Yeah, I mean. I meant to say it's still in the circle, or you know.
Yeah, okay. I might be hearing people. I'm not sure.
I'm outside beside you here.
Is there 3x shit in here?
Yeah, I don't have any guns for that.
Joe, I'll drop this I'll drop the 2x for the
There's
3x.
that 3.
Okay.
Oh, you're a lifeline. Oh, and you're the 2x here. Everybody gets what they
Oh,
want.
nice.
Oh, nice.
Any use site for me? Motherfucking right.
I'll take that other 2x.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's what some fool busted my ass with this L-Star with one day, maybe.
Extended light standard stock here. Level 2.
You can use that light mat? Yeah, I can use that. The blue standard stock.
Level 2.
2 blue standard stock. I need to pull standard stocks out of that.
Isn't
Hey!
that where you keep yours?
There you go. There's a circus site.
Yeah, I could use that for my other thing. Shit, I never
Other
changed my
thing,
99
you know,
skin. Ooga booga.
Ooga booga.
You guys
There were some
see
good
a,
comic strips back in the day. See what?
You guys see a box of sniper ammo, I could use it.
Okay.
Did anybody go here?
Probably. I think I did all. Yes, I did that.
Sniper bullets?
I think,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's loot it. Oh, there you go. Here's
Sniper ammo here.
2-box
Thank you.
sniper shit.
Medkit here.
And a med kit.
Oh,
up
I didn't
here.
do the
And
roof.
a blue standard stock.
Level 2.
Whoever was here didn't do a good job.
Okay, I'm dropping another stack of light if anybody needs it.
I'm good on bullets right now. The only thing I could really use are like gun parts and like oh shit, the wall's like almost in our face already. What is it? So gun parts and big shield cells. I don't have any of them, so I can go use.
Yeah.
Oh, you went there, Joe? I didn't
Yeah,
go.
it was right here.
We can go back to this hole though, and then I'll take us to a different little town over there.
I hear shooting over to the north somewhere. I don't know if we want
Alright.
to push that or.
Wait, where did you bring it? Oh.
Yeah, we can do that. Like
Yeah, I
towards
haven't even
This
heard
way.
it yet.
market or what?
I suggest we do some research in this area.
Oh, that
Oh,
one's
over there.
A champion just fell.
I think I'm gonna have to get burned to go in there. We're gonna get cut off. Yeah, we can't. I'm looking at the map.
It's just the first ring. It won't hurt us to run around this little.
But yeah, but then now you're stuck there. Is what I'm saying.
No, there's a little cave thing
Well,
here.
that's what I mean. Like we can't go further the way we want to go. Is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah, I got you. On around the edge and shit. Yeah. Where this fighting at? Somebody must have. Oh, I hear more shit. Okay. Hearing just an explosion.
Oh, now I'm hearing shit. Okay, in the caves,
Oh yeah. Okay.
or in that general direction at least.
Yeah, I think it is in the
Yeah.
caves.
I see a. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I think that's a shield, a Gibraltar shield, poking through that building down there.
What in? Will you
It's
ping
all
it?
the way down by the river. It's down.
We should conduct a
Maybe I'm
Oh.
mistaken. I don't know. I'm coming to you
Okay,
guys. I might be wrong. It looks like the edge of a shield
Alright.
poking through, like the wall of a building.
It probably is, but I think the fighting was over here. I'm kind of
It's
creeping.
still
With
here.
you. Okay.
Until close. Rings nearby.
Right outside this, not far outside of this cave though. Right there.
Oh yeah, there's a dude. Yeah. I've done over 100 to that kid. There's a kid there. Done over 100 to him.
Purple shield, I did 90 to.
Burning
Guy
them.
behind the big rock.
I'm gonna keep over this side. It's probably where they're gonna jump to try to stop the burnage. They're in the house again.
All right, one of them is running over here.
Oh no, that looks like another squad. There's a Gibraltar and somebody else.
They're up top here.
Ooh, I almost got fucked up there. I did get fucked up, but
There's a squad
I'm
over there.
fucking dead. They're all just looking at me. Oh,
yeah,
we're
you
getting,
might want to back
Yeah.
off.
we're getting double
Yeah,
teamed.
that's the
We're getting
squad
double
that we were
teamed.
talking about.
I would back off, yeah. Another squad's running in.
Fall back.
I'm just gonna go over here and heal.
In progress.
Yeah, fall back, fall back.
I threw my ultimate at the squad that was pushing in so we could get some breathing room.
Good idea, good
They're in
idea.
the river right here.
Oh shit.
And people are just, they're-
There's a guy right up there where you pinged.
Yeah, dude, right up.
Oh, maybe that's the robot. Oh, shit. Ah, the fucking wings
oh shit,
burning
yeah,
up.
the,
I went in this hole. This rafe
Yeah,
hole.
me too.
oh shit. I was too far.
I downed this
Shit.
rafe bitch.
Yeah, yeah, go in the wraith hole and then there's a zip line,
I'm
Joe.
too far away from it.
Almost killed that other dude.
Dude, I didn't
I
get a
got,
single goddamn shot.
oh man. Can you drop your drone?
No,
Did you get
I'm
the drone?
caustic.
I'm
I'm
not sure if
caustic.
I Get it.
Fuck.
Oh my god,
There's
I got
two
like
dudes in
95%.
Two dudes in this bubble.
Fuck. Are you
Yeah.
in? Oh, you're in. You went the other way. That's fine. Alright, well I'm gonna die in this storm, yeah. Alright, well just pick up my box. Oh, I thought you were
No.
a healing bitch.
I was saying that I'm caustic.
Yeah, you can't help me at all.
Oh, both guns are empty. Fuck.
Dude, I don't understand how somebody killed me with that fucking L-Star last night or whenever from like 20 yards away. I was firing at a guy and that shit was like kicking up so fucking bad. Maybe it was because I was on a zip line. Maybe you have to be standing.
got the
I don't
cheat
know.
code.
Oh yeah, zipline definitely changes things.
Yeah,
Using
did the
cheat
culture
codes.
code. I've got to
I'm
finish
gonna
up this
go to the
chicken and
bathroom
eat it.
smoke. I'll be right back. Oh, you're leaving for
Okay, I'll be back in just a few. I'm just
Alright,
going to eat some
sounds
chicken and I'll be
good.
back in like
Oh, I thought that was
15,
all
20
reason you left
minutes.
earlier. Alright. Well, I'll be back.
Well, I
in less
was
than a minute,
cooking.
Joe. I'll be
I
back
had
in
one
like
course
8.
done, and then I
Sure.
was waiting on the other shit. Yeah, I'll be
Well,
back in a few.
I'm making 4 courses over here. Yeah. Alright, I'll
Be
see you
back
in a
soon.
bit.
Oh, we just entered a game. I entered a game. I guess they backed out. I didn't realize.
It's a fine
Whatever.
avoid death.
Definitely use the practice. As y'all see, I also could use the practice drawing. I got 2 commissions. It's like 1 big commission. I gotta do a Icons of Horror mashup, like the Pokemon mashup I did, and a Sonic mashup. But I really want to use the sketchbook, and I really want to use these markers. So I need to just do like a doodle, just so I can use both.
Fucker factor.
So that's what I'm gonna work on right here.
I'm the jump master. Follow me. Supply ship over there.
This
I'm ready.
is much more than shooting a gun.
Alright, let's do this then.
Prepare for certain death. Let's explore this way.
Oh, that dude already jumped and was going there. So good thing I decided I changed my mind and was going here. course you are.
Marking our surroundings. I downed one. That's one step closer. Getting shot at. I'm down. I need to get back in.
I need a weapon.
He fucking died and left immediately. What piece of shit. And he fucking left too. God. Gold Bears 33 and Daynata. Both of them are fucking bitches. They can both suck my taint. I'll block both of them because I definitely don't want to play with any pussies like that. Dude wanted to come here. Wanted to come here so bad that when I pinged somewhere else, he broke off and jumped in by himself. Because he's so gangster. So gangster, and then he goes down immediately. Because he's really just let's say it together. Pussy. You know what I'm saying? Oh. Let's do this. Let's do this, or let's get crazy. Now where I want to throw that. I see you over there.
The ring is within walking distance, and I still have a minute. Throwing frag. Throwing frag.
I see you over there, bitch.
Ring is within close proximity. 45 seconds. Breathe it This whole squad has been dealt with. 30 seconds. The ring is near.
Alright. Waste of an ultimate, but whatever. I'll live. I will live. He will not.
Must get inside the ring.
He didn't realize it was THICC Boy Thursday. And on THICC Boy Thursday, we get THICC Boy. Shut up, bro. Don't tell people I'm here. I'm committing. I'm dropping all this light ammo. Give me this, give me this, give me this. Sneaky, sneaky butcher. Don't need that, don't need that. Give me more throwables. I probably don't need that many shields. That's a ridiculous amount of shields. Let me check these couple little buildings over here. Here we go. Here we go. Knock, knock.
New kill leader appointed.
There's a lifeline bin. Oh, I definitely need heavy. That's probably too crazy. I'm gonna do it though. Alright, got one of those. What do I need? What? Nah, I'm probably good. Probably go to anything else. I hear a bird. I got lit the fudge up.
Backpack here. Level 2.
D3. Let's see. How do I? No, I just want to block them. I'm not gonna report them. Block that son of a bitch. I didn't mean to send him a request.
You found me. Now come and get me.
Like that don't seem. That shit seems fake. I don't know. Don't know why. It just does. Duos or trios are ranked.
Yo, yo. What is up?
Nah,
In the game?
game just ended. I'll send you an invite.
Invite accepted. I went to Home Depot today, and there was like a line of like, I don't know, maybe 30 people outside waiting to get in. They said they're only letting 100 people in the store at once. So I was like, well, how long do you think this line's going to take? They're like, I don't know, because there's like somebody works there, like, I guess letting one person in whenever one person leaves. Oh no, depends how fast people come out. I'm like, it's, if it was only going to be like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I would have said that. Plus, it defeats the whole purpose. Everybody in line was like fucking, like they're in line for movies, like a foot apart. Like,
Well, you guys should.
so what's the
You
point
guys,
of?
I mean, but you guys are all adults, and you guys could make sure you're standing further apart.
Yeah, I could stand 6 feet behind somebody, and somebody could walk up behind me, and I could tell them, "Hey, can you back up?"
Which is the responsible
It's
thing
like,
to do.
fuck that. Yeah, I
which
just
is
didn't
even
go.
yeah,
I
even
was
more.
like, because it also rained all day today, so I figured I'll go when it's not as busy. Maybe people all went later because it rained
Really,
all day.
it only
earlier.
rained for like, I don't know, a half hour up here. Not even. It rained really
No,
hard.
really? I was hearing the rain while I was like sleeping. I don't know when it started, but I know I was hearing it while I was sleeping for at least a couple hours. And when I woke up, it kind of slowed down.
Wow, so you were sleeping and you knew it was raining? I said you were sleeping
What?
and you knew it was raining?
Well, yeah, while like you become somewhat conscious, because my head is literally right by the window in my bed, so I can hear it.
Yeah, because it was...
Are you? No, you're not the
No.
one downstairs. Then yeah, there's somebody else
Because
down.
Kim was on the phone with
down
somebody
below
and she was talking about how it was like raining and stuff, and Kim's like, really? The sun's like out up here. And then like we could see the clouds coming in, it got dark and stormy, and then wind picked up, then it
Wanna go
started
down?
raining, and then
I just dropped down.
alright, yeah, I'm not quite ready for that, but
Not gonna take out the new kill leader. Too cocky.
Yeah, and then there was only like, I don't know, quick little rain.
I guess I went further down. Yeah, that door is open. You wanna go hunt them down or what? Maybe hit those bins over here, I think, right? Maybe we can check them out.
All things die.
I'm not really loving my guns,
Yeah, I got a
but I can make it
P2020
work.
for my second gun.
Where the fuck are these bins at? Oh, and these bins. Oh, maybe that's what I was thinking. But they're all looted. Shit. Let's just go in the
Yeah,
big
this
one.
door's
and
open over here.
hopefully kill them.
It's all looted. Or not all looted, but...
Optics here.
No, I thought that was a 3X. It was not. Purple shotgun bolt.
Yeah.
Right here. Right here. I think they were avoiding us. Yeah, right here.
He's like... I don't know, is he taunting us? Why was he just like
I don't know.
bobbing
what
up and down? Did he not have any guns? Was he trying to be friends?
He's not cool. No, he definitely 100% has guns.
Level 2.
Oh, someone else is coming. They're over there. You see it?
Why is my gun away? Why did my gun go away? What?
Right there. You see them? They're running away.
Gas trap deployed. Death will have to wait.
Yep.
They're coming around the back. No, not the back.
They are dead.
30 seconds remain. The ring moves. That kill signaled the end of that entire squad.
They want the foot. Ooh, a purple heavy clip. I'll take it. I don't know what my syringes are like. Oh, I'm completely out of heavy bullets.
No, I'm like running out of life over
Oh, I thought
here.
you were up. I didn't realize you went down.
Close.
No, when they came around, they instantly downed me.
My bad. I didn't know that shit happened. Alright, so there's
Shield cell here.
and a 99. I'm gonna go swap this P2020 out for. I saw something somewhere. An alternator. Ooh, although I did have the hammer point. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try it with the hammer point. I didn't realize I had that.
And I'm gonna take some of those bullets. Alright, I need to heal up.
Charging shields.
Alright, let me heal up. Yeah, I just switched out for a flatline since I don't have the other thing.
There's a new kill leader.
Okay, we should go rush those bullets as soon as we get up.
Okay. Alright, I'm ready.
It's not even
Oh,
far.
there's somebody
It's
right
right
there.
in that shit.
Target spotted.
Shit. Alright, hold on.
I can pop them. Let me know. They're standing still. Oh, they're begging for it.
Alright, I'm gonna creep on them. Do
Yeah,
you see
they're
them?
yeah,
Are
they're
you lying on
standing still right there. I'm lined up with their head.
Alright, wait till they're in my crosshairs. Just smoke them.
All right,
Wait, where?
they're on.
I don't see your
They're on the
crosshairs
rock up
anymore.
there. Oh shit! There's
Alright, go ahead.
somebody's behind
I
me.
don't see them.
God damn it!
Yeah, third party. I just saw at least 3 people. Fuck. Ah! Oh my god! Fucking shield. Ah! Alright. I'll run back and bring you back over here. There's a bunch of crates we can check and shit.
Yeah, walls coming in. Don't really have time. It's gonna be like
Oh, yeah, you're right. Shit. Alright, well then. Shit. There should be heals in these boxes. I'm hoping.
Fuck.
Come on, come on, come on. Yeah. I got heals. Fuck. Oh god, it's not even a straight run. Oh god, my shields are. I should have kept the other shields I had. Shit. Oh man, I got rid of shield cells I shouldn't have. Fuck it. It's gonna be alright. Alright, just respawn right up here. Let me just shield up first. I'll open these bins over here for you. You ready?
Yeah.
To loot and run, because everybody's gonna run right over looking to fuck us up. There's a vest, wingman, grenade, hat, blue knockdown. Oh shit, they're right here. Just run away. I gotta run a different way because I am fucking almost dead already. Yep, no, they're following me. Fuck, man.
Brand new skin. Pop that shit on. And a purple thing in my Apex. An epic Mozambique skin. No way. I had a factory Mozambique skin. Not anymore. Now I got an epic Mozambique skin. Oh, and this new thing wasn't.
Jacks.
I thought that this was a. Fuck. It wasn't even a cool. Like, epic skin. Oh, it's a special. Event skin. Okay, so it's still cool. Alright.
Alright. I'm gonna bed. I'll be right back.
Alright.
Oh, man. I'm very annoyed at that last game. 100% my fault, but I'm still super annoyed at it.
Yeah, I know how it is.
I'm gonna shut this window.
I'm back. Had to finish my second course. The third and fourth will be up shortly.
My hair for this. Wrong with looking good in the ring. I look good.
So what'd you have? Chicken, barbecue chicken, and what'd you make after that?
French fries.
Yeah, nice.
Made the chicken second, but yeah, doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay.
I think Grim's saying, like, how dare you have fries with a chicken sandwich? The most absurd thing ever.
Follow the leader.
Unforgivable.
Out of camp. Let's check it over there. Check this out.
Got my cool new Gibraltar skin on. I'm ready to rape. I got a Prowler, could use a select fire roll if we see a 1-0.
Let's go here.
All right.
I didn't do like the second floor of that, I just jumped straight down.
Oh shit, I got enemies over here and no gun.
Oh, no gun.
Alright, there's guns over here if you want them.
Well,
all the way up
Yeah,
there.
trying
far.
to, kinda,
I'm coming.
I'm coming back though.
Alright, I see.
I was
a
just
white
trying to
shirt.
evade 'em.
Just want to at least grab that real quick.
Okay, you're safe now.
Did I say white? I mean blue.
Okay, I
Find a
got
gun yet?
Yeah.
Hey, you know what I didn't do? Change my fucking 99 skin.
I thought you didn't ever want to change it, and that's why you're pretending to forget all the time.
Level 1.
I could use that. I'm dropping this Prowler. I'm going with the Hemlock.
SMG here.
Yep. Did you open these, Zero? Or was that an enemy?
I did,
Buildings?
but I
Wasn't
did, but
you?
I'm sure they're around.
Oh, okay.
It was absolutely me.
Okay. Emergency. Wait, they're here. I hear
Oh,
them.
shit.
Yep, yep.
It might even be on the roof? No.
I'm coming.
Oh shit!
The other one's down below, right here.
Got one. Oh shit! Where's this fucker at?
Shit, I'm stuck in the.
Oh, on top of this shit.
Yeah, you see them?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I'm not there. Fuck.
Oh man, they can shoot me through that fucking shit.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
they're chasing me. They're chasing me.
Give him my shield to recharge.
Do you not have a gun?
I'm fucking dead. God damn it, man.
Yeah,
Who,
look like
me?
you were trying to punch.
No, I have a gun. I was just trying to close. I was
only
trying
one
to
still
close the
alive.
fucking door. That's it.
Long way to the ring. No worries, brother.
So you're
She's
ultimate
getting-
if you got it.
She just killed me. She's getting her.
No, I was
buddy up or
getting.
something.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was
she
getting
getting
him out.
him. Okay. Well, she just killed me from somewhere. I don't know where the fuck she's at.
In hand.
Throwing arc star.
Reloading.
It's probably purpose. Alright, I'm gonna shield up in here real quick.
Charging shield.
Bam, getting shot.
She's coming. Wait, where did she shoot you from?
Janela shoots through these.
This motherfucker was pinging the shit out of us.
Killed an enemy.
She's coming.
Yeah, that dude was
Right here.
being a bitch.
Alright, I have
They're
enough
sliding
health.
down
Let's just go get her.
I think I hear another one too.
Yeah, somebody's shooting a fucking triple tip from
Yeah,
the roof.
she got her buddy up.
What? That was
Yeah,
somebody
somebody's
else.
shooting from
they
the
were
roof.
doing one person.
Well,
That
there were
wasn't
two
even their
crawlers, I
teammate.
think. Oh,
Could have been the third.
Fuck. Yeah, I thought she was the last one left. Oh, so I would have healed all the way. Fuck. Oh, right, we're not playing duos. Oh, I'm dumb.
Why is it not letting me ready up? What the fuck?
Mine was a little slow, too.
Let's play some ranked.
Alright.
Rank them up.
Give me a real reason to be upset. Fuck, there's not enough room. God damn it, I do this to myself all the time.
I don't even have to show up.
I'm ready for whatever today.
That has been a problem of mine forever. Like, when I used to graffiti, like, I would like run out of room in my book. Like, anytime I draw pictures, like, like, proportion is, I'm terrible at.
I'll high-five you all when I see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe would be graffitiing the word true, TRU, and there'd be no room for the U on the page.
And then I would have to, like, use my other arm. I'd run out of room on my arm when I was carving it.
Put them together and then you
Yeah.
can read it. Yeah. That really pissed off the pediatrician.
She was so mad about that. She, like, thought I
Did
needed,
I
like,
tell you back there?
Maybe we don't. I'm fine.
yeah, we can go back. She, like, thought I needed, like, fucking counseling and shit. And I'm like, I don't need that. My dad's like, oh yeah, we'll talk to somebody. It was like probably one of 5 times my dad took me to the doctors, and she like called him in the back,
One of 5 times
took
your
me to the
dad what?
doctors. I mean, and like this is happening, and like my mom, like whatever. I
Just
could
got
like tell
lucky.
my mom anything.
Your dad's like, is this what happens every
Yeah, right.
time?
I could tell my mom anything and she would have been fine with it. But like my dad's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what are you doing? And then like doctor's like, oh, that's, you want to hurt yourself? Like, why would you do this? I'm like, cause it's cool. Like, you don't get it. I didn't say that, but like that's what I was thinking. Like, like you don't get it. Like,
You
it's
don't get
it's
it,
a
Mom.
cool tattoo, man.
Parents just don't understand.
You don't get a pediatrician.
What did? Were you doing it with a pen? or
Yeah,
something?
did it with a razor. and
Razor
then,
blade.
like rubbing ink in it and stuff, but it didn't stay.
All right.
Oh, I'm being sniped from
God.
the big building across the way.
That sounds so fucking
Fuck.
painful.
Yeah, I could use that to him, but I don't have any bullets. Even if I go up there, I still need to go somewhere else.
Oh God. Yeah, I got nothing to shoot back at him with.
Damn. So, were you the one that was in that first building? Didn't have any guns at all? Oh shit! I'm like, I'm fucking dead, man. What the fuck?
I told you there was somebody over there.
Oh damn it, dude! She's got like a. There's 2 of them. Oh, there's. Dude, Joe, I'm down
Anybody
behind.
have
Go
shield
inside.
cells?
Yeah, I got some.
I'm dead. I'm a dead
Oh,
motherfucker.
yeah, yep. They're zipping
They're
over.
zipping over. They're zipping over.
Oh man, I've had
Oh
enough
no!
of this
I
game.
tried to pull a slick move and I fell off.
Yeah, I didn't have the fucking gun, dude. I hurt one of them a little bit, but.
Well, yeah, ping him.
Oh, right on you.
You ran right past the ping, man.
I didn't see it till afterwards. I thought they were still up with 0, but after I threw it, I saw them.
Yeah.
Well, she
jumping
jumped
off.
off the
Fuck, man.
stairs,
How's
is
there
what-
no fucking guns in that whole fucking building? Or was that you that I was in the first building with? But still, there should be more than 2 guns in the whole building.
Yeah, that's kind of lame.
Yeah, big ass building, 0 fucking guns. Or well, maybe 1. I don't know how many you had, but even if you had 2, still, that's all that was in that first building. 2 guns.
Yeah, I had 2. I don't know if you're talking to me. I had 2.
I had a
Yeah,
301
whoever
and a
was in the
2020.
building we landed on, I didn't get any gun. And even if
Oh.
there was only 2 in that whole building, that's still ridiculous.
Yeah, I got mine.
Should
From that
definitely be
building,
more
but I
than
mean,
that.
Yeah, I thought that was just one guy shooting from that building. And so I, like, you know, returned fire or something, but it was fucking 2 of them, and one of them was ducking in and out behind the AC unit or whatever.
But not this time.
Yeah, they just cut us in half.
The thing is not to die.
I just went to try to grab the gun and I lost like 140 health like real fast.
Pain, death.
Yeah, one of them had a hemlock. I couldn't figure out what he was shooting at first, but he was doing it on single fire.
Ooh, nighttime. Want to do
Let's
the
go with
blue?
that
I feel
round
like
shit. Yeah, we can do the blue.
I
We
feel
can
like
do
the
the blue.
blue. We don't have to, because I feel like it's probably gonna be mad people. 'Cause it's like the brightest thing in this whole map. I feel like people are drawn to it like moss.
Yeah.
What arm do you
Yeah,
want to go
let's-
to? Right there. Alright.
Fucking burn some moss.
Burning time. I'll
Show
start on
them
the
moss
left
the
over
candle.
here.
Got one here.
Yeah, okay, I
So
guess
many
I'll go
moss at that
right.
candle.
Ew. I thought there was. Oh goddamn! So how did somebody land right in front of us, dude? How did that fucking happen?
And I ran down the block to get.
God fucking damn!
That
That kid landed right beside me.
oh my god. Ah.
Alright, they're down.
Oh god fucking damn! Here's a
And I
dude
can
right
shoot
here.
up.
Charging shields. Just shoot me now, brother. We can do this.
Are they in here?
We're in the next ring.
What is this noise?
Yeah. Yeah, there's enemies.
This would be the sound of a bad guy getting someone up in smoke. I couldn't even fucking see their ass.
Is there health?
Can't even tell what's in my fucking hands. Okay, that worked.
Is there health?
There's an
Is there
Evo
health?
shield in there.
I need health.
I don't have any now.
The revive thing's right
I'm
I'm
outside when
going
you
to
get.
get 0 back.
That was
Yeah.
yours.
Oh yeah,
That-
there's bins.
Dropping a fire to spit. You want it? Oh, 301. I'm the 91, 99 for the shredding. The shredding capabilities. All right, you
I
want
can't believe that
here?
full dropped directly behind
There's at
us.
least
Yeah.
vest, and I think there's
Yeah,
another
OB.
box.
OB, god damn it. There's that.
Yeah, oh yeah, there's 2 boxes right here.
Yeah, so here,
Here's the RE45.
I'm dropping
and
some ammo
Evo
here, and there's a
shield.
301 right there at 0. If you come this way.
Okay, thanks.
And there's 2 more boxes out here too. Looks like somebody else got killed.
Yeah, the box
Okay.
outside
Wait,
is
no,
0's.
one box.
That's 0's box.
Death box here.
And I killed a guy over here. I downed a guy.
This one is
No,
not
I downed a
zeros.
guy over here. I didn't know he died. Was there any health in that box?
No.
Yeah, Birdman like pulsed, so
I can give you some bullets. if
no,
you
I
need some.
got bullets.
Got it. Okay.
I've got
man. I can
bullets.
definitely share some bullets.
I got bullets. I need health.
I'm okay for a minute here.
Let's just go towards the carnage. I'm just like drawn to it, man.
All right.
You need that? You need that heavy?
Yeah, I could use one box. Yeah.
Yeah, pick it up. Here, I'll give you another box. Here. Grab both of them. You want to go?
I'm looking. I mean, we
gunshot
can.
noises,
Yeah, I'm
Joe?
looking for health.
Oh, you need health. I think they're up top of shit. Oh, here we go. I found some. I
Oh,
found your
okay,
fuse kit.
there's
Oh, and
boxes
there's
out
boxes
here
in
too.
here, too.
They're empty though. P2020.
There's fucking mad
Yeah,
boxes, dude.
That
Oh,
fire
there's a
was real
gold prowler
close.
in there.
Yeah, go for
I don't
it.
have any heavy bullets.
Yeah, dude. There's fucking boxes
Yeah,
galore.
I got a med kit.
There's still people around here, though.
There's a
so
gold
be careful.
prowler here.
Prowler SMG here.
Actually, I'm gonna take it. I'm dropping this Eva. There was some heavy bullets in there, so I took it. There's a blue.
Extended heavy mag here.
99 here.
Level 2.
Circle site.
Close range.
Did you find
So
help
look-
yet, Joe? I got
Yeah,
a med kit.
no,
You
yeah, I
need it?
picked up a med kit.
How many more boxes are
There's
out
two
there?
boxes
And
up there.
where is these people that finished it? Was there any throwables anywhere?
I don't know. I
any.
didn't look.
Oh, there's like 4 boxes out here, Mother Joe. Flatline too.
Yeah, I grabbed the gold prowler. Oh, there's a box in here too.
Kill leader. Optics here. Closer peacekeeper here. Gotta hop on.
Dropping
All
a
boxes.
Spitfire and a
Millions of boxes.
blue
There's a
mag.
gold box out there.
Oh, you mean out
Yeah.
here is one. Ah.
So I could definitely use more heavy.
You know, maybe I should.
Oh,
No,
oh, and there's more
no.
boxes in here. Holy shit.
Well, here's more heavy.
Okay.
Damn, I don't know if I even want to find these people.
No, there's definitely a crate maker out there.
Check it out. Care package
Standard,
coming in.
standard stock here. Level 2. R99 here.
Yeah, I'll take that heavy. Thank you. How you jumping?
You guys have any light?
Yeah, I got some.
Yeah, here's 60.
I feel like there was light in these boxes.
I dropped like.
Yeah, there's 60 light in this
Light
box.
ammo here.
Okay. I dropped some heavy ammo like.
Yeah, I
where
just
you're
picked it
at
up. There's
there, Joe,
100
if you-
light in another box. So they're in 2 boxes. There's 160.
Okay, good shit. Oh, I didn't even see these 2 in the fucking corner. That's crazy. Crazy numbers of
It's
boxes.
an insane. It's probably like 2 people are just like making all these crates.
Well,
Oh,
or,
man.
it could have been a lot of people killed each other and somebody finished at the end. I mean,
Yeah.
Because I
hope
told you, I
so.
feel like mad people will go here because it's a bright ass light in a dark map. It just kind of like calls you in.
yeah.
Standard light mag here. Level 2.
Yeah.
I need it.
I'd like to know where they vacated to. They must be geared as fuck.
Yeah, if
Who wants a
Or
finger
they
chip?
heard us coming and they were like, "We're going to
yeah,
die."
they're like, oh shit, it's that Zero Logic crew. I hear that they shoot people sometimes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they said they don't want no smoke from Zero Logic.
Yeah, I told them.
Incorporated.
Fucking THICC Boy Thursday, and they're like, oh shit, son. Dropping 4 shield
Shield
cells.
cell here. Syringe here.
Flatline and heavy ammo.
Oh, that's why I don't have any.
Heavy ammo.
Hamos.
I like getting hammered with the hamos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ooh, I
I
didn't
was like,
mean to
what,
take
you
that. I was
pinged
trying to
it,
take
and then like as I
There you
get there, you pick it up. I'm like, what is this shit?
yeah.
I'm full.
Like, psych.
Played.
There's
You got
still
played. It.
10 bullets there for anybody who needs.
Yeah, I could use some.
Oh, well, you could have had the whole box. Shit, I didn't know you needed some.
Where you want to get?
Yeah, oh,
Sounds like
yeah,
the
I was
ship
about to
went over
ask
here.
that. Yeah, it is.
Right, I'm gonna pull out my digital threat and look around. Maybe that'll help me see people. I don't know.
Oh, it's going to let me throw a zip to the
Oh
ship.
shit. Zip
Oh,
to
let's
the
do it.
ship.
Ready to fly on a zip line.
I got my arm shield turned off so people don't see me. I gotta remember to turn that back on though.
Oh, so when you jump and then grab the rope again, it actually slows it down. It seems like.
Oh, perhaps. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because you travel slower in the air, I think. Yeah, man, you're not.
Yeah, I just never noticed it before.
Yeah, neither have I, and I never
Just
thought
assumed if
about
you're
it.
on a zip line, you're on a zip line. It's all the same. Yeah. Yeah, let's get out of here. Ain't shit for us.
Oh, that was super clean.
So clean, we didn't pick anything up. We left no fingerprints.
Hold on, I'm gonna check here. I want some Bernie sticks. I think I might see one. Yep, definitely 100% a Bernie. Dropped a grenade, and there's an arc star too. If anybody needs throwables.
I got one grenade.
Yeah, I'll take an arc start.
Round 2. Beginning
There's a
ring
zip line
countdown.
here, so I
Attention.
assume they used to go this way. Oh, and there's a box
Something good there.
and a care package.
Inbound.
Nothing here. Oh, there's a blue knockdown. No, we're all good on them. Bernie stick? Fuck yeah, there's 2 grenades in here. 3 grenades in here now. Use
There's a
site.
site here. That's a
That's what I
circle
can
site
use.
though. Another circle site.
Yeah, I got a circle on my flatline. You really just put it over the top.
Oh, there's a gold box up in the poopy plant.
Heavy ammo here. Heavy ammo.
Yeah. Oh, poopy plant stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah, I could use heavy too.
Yeah, that's why.
Zero threat.
Close range.
That's why I be pinging that shit.
To rescue you. Be in Shady's world. Did you make me hurl?
Attention.
It's an old song.
Kill leader.
Keep eyes on the new kill leader.
Yeah, yeah.
How many fights did we get in? Just those people in the beginning, right?
One.
Yeah, I think I got one kill.
So I got
I'll
2,
fix you
so I
up.
guess that's
Close
it.
range.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Use heavy ammo with that hemlock. Somebody zipping? Oh, that was 0. Oh,
That's me.
Jesus.
That's me.
Oh shit. Shoot him! Shoot the robot! Shoot the robot! I don't trust him. Another Bernie
Yeah, I
stick?
just picked one up.
Need to light this map up. Bitches, they come, they go. Saturday, shoot Sunday, Monday. Monday, shoot Sunday, go.
Can't believe there's 3 other squads in this big ass circle.
3X.
I like one to pick up. Oh, I'll actually take that this game. I got a 301. Unless you wanted 0, I don't know where you're
Somebody's
running.
fighting. This direction.
Oh, a 2x. I'm taking
okay.
a 2x and leaving a 3x.
Optics.
Oh, I mean,
Mid-range.
oh, I didn't mean okay. I need the side. I've got a side. I mean okay about the fighting.
Alright.
How about this way? Got one spot.
Going down over there.
On the other ship?
Behind that ship, kinda.
Check it out.
Towards like the cage area, I guess.
Oh,
You can
one
see
of
the
them's on
bullets
the ship.
flying.
It looks like
Oh,
there's
yeah?
bullets coming off the ship. I'm not sure.
That's the last 2 out of 3 squads right there. Pretty much.
Ooh, there's a loot tick in here. Hold on.
Monday to Sunday, yo.
Purple heavy mag.
Let's get a heavy mag.
Bernie stick.
Level 3.
Another Bernie
Yeah,
stick.
one squad
oh, yeah,
just
I
got
can use
put
that.
out.
We're doing great.
Alright.
Only 2 other
There's
squads
only 2
remaining.
squads left.
New kill
You can
leader.
use that.
Heads up.
Let's get ready
Are you
to
are
rock,
you here to
ready
get it?
roll. Yes. Thank you. I dropped the blue one. In case you need one, Zero.
Blue what?
Yeah, the last 2 squads are fighting.
Close range.
Go get some.
Okay. Oh, the last 2 are fighting?
I was hearing bullets, and there's only 2 other squads.
Yeah, I just
I don't know
didn't
if
hear
they're
them.
chasing somebody? I don't know.
Oh, they're zipping down. One squad is zipping
Okay.
down.
Yeah, I see them.
toward-
Oh, and there's people
Oh,
shooting
yeah,
from
okay,
the
there's
cage.
Oh,
the
and
other one.
so the
There's
other
the other one.
squad's
They're
to the
in-
left. Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
the last
let's
2
let them
squads.
engage, and then we can engage. I mean, that's what I would think is a good strategy.
Absolutely.
Bad guy over there.
Yeah, they're running like all the way up there now.
The other
They're
squad's
up to the
going now?
bridge. You
Oh
wanna go to
shit!
the other
One
Yeah,
side?
squad.
okay.
So this
Two
way, no
ran
matter
through.
what,
Yeah, I think that's
they're
a good
probably
idea,
chasing
Grim.
them.
Joe,
you
do you
wanna
want
go
to
the
come
other side
flank them?
this way?
Oh,
You
they're getting a
definitely
third
won't
back.
get
They're getting a
stuck in the
third back
middle.
right here.
The
Well, the other squad's
No,
chasing
that's
him,
the
I
squad
think.
that was okay.
Yeah.
That's the
Oh,
squad
I'm
that
sorry,
was
I thought you were chasing
that
him,
was
my bad.
chasing. Is getting them back. I'm being sniped at now.
Well, the people
Yeah,
up
let
there
him
are
fight,
sniped
and
on.
we can.
You're being
Yeah,
sniped at?
just run.
I'm coming.
No, you're not.
We
This
can
is
zip
No,
somebody
yeah,
else.
bullets just flew by me.
Yeah, I'm gonna look back. Or do you want to just run
one
up?
of them on
Up
the
here to
ship?
Zip.
Well, they're
That'd be
already
more
they're
smart.
shooting.
That's what I would
don't
do, but
think
you
they're
guys can do
gonna-
whatever you want.
Okay.
But zip,
Okay. Yeah.
that
Let's,
zip line goes so close to him.
Yeah, it's right
They
where
would
one of them is at.
Definitely hear that.
I think. Right
They're
next
shooting
to
at
him
you
anyway.
anyway.
Yeah. They see me.
Oh, that's the guys from
Yeah,
the ship.
we're all just
Right,
running
or
right
is
up
that the-
into.
Fuck. How'd you get up there, Grim? Oh, I see.
I don't know. I just kept jumping and shit. This
Yeah.
one's
I didn't see this
admittedly a
little
lot
ridge
harder
here.
to climb up.
Well, here I got a
I'm
zip.
gonna zip up and give you guys some distraction.
It's really hard to climb these rocks. That's for sure. You just have to look
Oh,
for
it
like,
won't even let
little
me
ledges
zip.
and shit.
Yeah, they're up there. I can see them.
Fucking hell! How'd you get up?
No, I just look for
Oh,
little
I don't know
ledges
how
and
you climb
climbed
that
up.
shit, Grim. I just fucking fell off.
They're fighting.
Going down
Yeah,
up there.
that's at the ship.
I can't get up these goddamn
Yeah.
rocks. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, we'll just go the easiest way towards this way. We should get close. There's still a dome up top, so somebody's up there.
Somebody just threw their ultimate up
They're
there.
dropping it on the roof here. Yeah.
Fuck.
Oh, somebody just ran in right here. I don't want them to know I'm here, so I'm being shady. I'm gonna walk in. Oh.
I broke his shield.
Oh no, no.
Another one.
Bad things. Oh, another one from the front door. Another one from the front door.
Oh man, I can't use my special
Recharging shields.
because I got. Where are they? Ping him if you see him.
They're at the front door. Last I saw.
It's two squads. Yeah, second, third squads here.
Rings close. One more minute.
Here, I'm blocking this door.
Can you get
I'm
in
Yeah,
blocking
we're
here?
in
this
here.
door.
Everybody's in
Oh
here.
shit! A grenade from the roof. Grenade from the roof.
Oh shit! Now we're in.
Coming in the
there.
roof. Coming in the roof.
He,
Yeah, ping him if you see
he
him. I
went
can't
back
see
up to the
anything.
roof.
Hopefully that seems to engage. I feel like if I start getting you up now.
Yeah, I know what you
Alright, here
mean.
we go.
It's kinda
Here,
hard to-
Somebody just shielded up above us.
As long as they're distracted.
Yeah, I'll get
about to
Joe.
bleed.
Zero, you hear yourself. Hear yourself.
I'm
Joe.
about to bleed out.
Go, get down here. Get
okay.
down here.
Oh, they're coming in. They're coming in.
God damn.
Yeah, it seemed like both squads decided to concentrate on us instead of each other there. I don't.
Yeah, that ultimate. I went inside because of that, and then there was a Gibraltar inside, and I broke his arm shield and his shield, and he broke my life.
Yeah, Gibraltars are pain in the ass.
We go to the bro. Man. Goddamn Gibraltar's. Go back to the Straits, man.
Ironically, he's gay.
So I like to have a little fun. So what?
Ready to go. I do not care who makes the kill, as long as I can observe it die.
champion.
You all think you'll make it out of this alive? As jump master, I'll decide on a course of action.
Yo.
Alright. I think this is gonna be my last game.
Supply ship over there.
Already.
Alright.
Already. Not having fun,
No.
Joe.
I mean, it's alright, but it's. I have other stuff I'd rather do.
No.
Oh, it skipped me. What the fuck? What the fuck, this game? God fucking damn it. Oh god. I'm getting chased by a shoddy wielding maniac.
Oh, here, you need it.
I need the. Oh, God. There we go. All right.
Oh, here.
What? What?
Someone got the party started.
No.
Coming in on you, coming in on you.
Okay. Hang it.
I'm fucking mid. Got. And that's why I'm done this fucking game.
What the fuck? What was she even? Scout.
I landed in a good spot, and the fucking game, like, lagged and, like, skipped me across the fucking surface I landed on like a fucking stone, and then somebody else landed pinpoint on where I landed and got all my shit. It was like,
That's happened to me and, like, made me go off of the ship. Like,
Yeah,
Well,
it
let
was,
me
it was
ready
pretty
up.
close. Yeah, it's been doing that to me all night. It takes it a minute, and then it'll let you.
but I'm done, fellas. It's been real. I will holler at y'all
Alright, have a good night,
later.
All right, man.
See you soon.
I'll talk to you,
See
man.
yous. Adios.
Peace.
Later.
You want to do?
Switch it up. Let's do some of my time in Portia for a little bit. I doubt it's here. I probably have to go in and do it platform by platform. Vacation simulator. That's funny. My time at Portia. Connection expired. Fuck, shit always happens. I'm gonna start a new game. I like the game I have, but I like it was taking forever to like figure out what to do. That like I missed quests and like didn't go to everything at the town. Now that I know what I'm doing, I'm going to.
I think I'll go talk with the research center first.
I think I'll go talk with the research center first.
I think I'll go talk with the research center first. They might.
I think I'll go talk with the research center first. They might think of something.
Guess the comb over is kind of my style, but I kind of like the messy anime style. I'll do the comb over. short is really like me. That's way too long. Change color with the right stick. I'm gonna go crazy anime color. The one I have, her name's Lily so far, and it's like a bluish, like that. I think I want to do. How do I? Oh, there we go. And then there's a hair highlight color. Yeah, let's do the highlights like a crazy purplish. Kind of like that. Kind of like deco style. I actually really like that then. Do that face type. It's my man right there. Make him like some weird ass alien. I think this fella. Oh, I prefer all that work, and I can like change this. Change it around. Lower face. Not good enough. Decoration. Like weird ass mustaches. Oh, do a beard. Beard length. Beard length too. What are these? What? I don't remember any of this for... It's been so long since I did this. You can't like change the color, pattern color down here. Make them like their scars. Yeah. Kind of like them as freckles now. Philly. There we go. Confirm? Yes, I confirm. Day one. I'm kind of thirsty. I'm getting a little hungry. Kind of tired, a little sweaty.
Coming up on Portia.
He says Portia,
Whoa,
but in the game's
beautiful.
one of the characters called
What
Portia.
are you gonna do there? Ruin
So I don't know how to say it.
Something like that.
We get someone like you once in a while. Always seeking that adventure. Good to be young.
Came up really quick and stopped like on the
Good
dime.
luck to you.
Thanks.
I don't think they know how sailboats work. There's a lot of crazy shit going on out there. You know what? In fact, I need to go help Kim out there with that. Hope he's being a monster. She's kept him away from me and let him doing all that stuff all this time, but I gotta take him. We gotta switch, and I can't have him in here when I stream because it's just crazy. So I want to thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. Each and every single one of you, whether you were here for a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10, an hour, whatever. I appreciate it. Spending a little bit of time with me on this wonderful THICC Boy Thursday. Yeah, whether it was Facebook, Twitch, Mixer, YouTube, however you spend time with me. Also, all the engagement I get on my social media. It's Mechanic on all socials, except Twitter. It's Mechanic G. And I also have an art Instagram that is art.mechanic. I appreciate the engagement, all of it. Love yous. Be safe, stay home. Shit's gonna get crazy. Well, shit is crazy. It's gonna get worse before it gets better. I hope everybody the best. Stay safe, stay smart, stay home if you can. Love yous. Be safe. To those that didn't stop